Right.
But yeah, man. Again, Sam Preis.
You're
Thank you
good.
so much for coming on. I know super busy, just coming back from an awesome vacation. So taking the time when I know you have a ton of things to catch up on is really great. So like we've talked about
Needed.
before, all I want to do is get to know you. That's pretty much the line of it. You've been doing the job you've done for many, many, many years. I've seen many, many, many things. I'm sure you have many, many, many stories. But what we can get out of it is what it means to you to help the people that you've helped. I'm sure there's just tons of those moments. And so the first thing we always start with is just tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, kind of where you're from, like what kind of got you into doing what you're doing, something like that.
So I was born in, I think you guys know this, I was born in Israel in 1972. Uh, I moved to the US in June of 84 to Akron, Ohio. My mom is American, my dad is Israeli. And I moved to Ohio in 1984. I went to middle school and then high school in Akron, Ohio, a high school called Copley High School. And then from there, I went to Ohio State. I was the third
Buckeye.
member of my family to go to uh, Ohio State. Third
Oh yeah.
generation, actually, more family members. But when you're in Ohio, I mean, it's about a
Yeah.
50-50 shot. And David Smith and I certainly bonded over that early because we're both Buckeye, his aunt, and so yeah. I went to Ohio State. I lived in Columbus for 7 years. So from 1990 to 1997, I lived in Columbus.
First year was
As
just
all
trying it
good
out, right? You
Buckeyes
got to
do,
get
I
in
took a
there
full
and
five
really
years
get
to
into
graduate from school.
it.
First and second year were we had a concept called freshman. We had a concept called freshman forgiveness. Uh, and no, I'm serious. You had in your first 45
Oh,
credit hours, you could take any class over. So so you at Ohio State, it was 45 credits a year for each year. So 45 was your freshman year, 90 was sophomore, et cetera, et cetera. You had to have 180 credits to graduate. And any credit that you took in the first 45 credits, you got to
because
take
they
over
knew
free
what
of
was about to go
charge. It's
down.
like a at bat that was erased. So
Horseshoe,
that was called
football
freshman
games,
forgiveness.
like there's just other stuff we've got to figure out before we do this education
I
thing.
mean, yeah, and the whole concept of you know, my first class was at Independence Hall. It was north of 750 people. So you learn early that attendance physically can't matter because they don't have the time to take attendance because I did math. I was always decent at math. So um, I figured out that if you have 750 people and you take five
We're
seconds on
teaching
each,
nothing.
name, there's no attendance is a concept that I no longer had. Where attendance was a concept, and then the curve came in. So I took a test and I got my first midterm at Ohio State. I got a 78 on, and I wasn't happy. I thought I was going to do better, but then with the curve, it ended up being a low A. And I was like, okay, so one, I don't have to go to class,
I'm
and two, a
in.
bunch of other dummies are going to make my dummy grades better.
That's awesome.
Well, that oh, I was in. Yeah, my mom had gone. Yeah, my mom had gone to
Yeah.
Ohio State, and that was my only advice. My dad went and served in the army. He didn't go to college. He did eventually, but so my mom was my source of information for school, and she's like, "Honey, get your classes out of the way early, and attendance is really
Yeah.
important." Well, the first two things she told me were wrong and more wrong. Early was a problem because we didn't go to bed till 6, and but yeah, 5 years. I graduated from Ohio State, and I got right into my first job. I always worked during school,
Oh, okay. So you went
but my
pretty much
first
right into it.
job after school was in the mortgage
All
business.
in.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, not pretty much. It was as right into it as you could get. I worked for a company in Ohio called Mid American Financial Services, um, and they had a very robust call center that used to set
The
appointments
good
for
old
us.
days.
and we used
Yeah.
to drive all over the state of Ohio. And yes, and they were good, and they were good, and they were old. Yep, we would do our
Press
good
hard three
faiths were
copies.
done in triplicate. One copy for me, one copy for you, one copy for the office. Our truth and lendings were done by hand, so I used to know how to calculate an APR by hand. And I think a lot of us that got into the business at that time, from a fundamental perspective, we were
Yeah. I think you're more
pretty decent
knowledgeable that way though,
fundamental loan
right? Like if you
officers, and
have to write all
you
that
couldn't
stuff down
just
and then you have to explain it to the
get
client or
on.
the customer, the person that's looking to refinance or they're looking to buy, and you got to go line by line and you have to write this thing out. I do think I had no idea. That's amazing because now for someone like me that's new, I'm like, yep, that's what it is. How'd you get it? Computer did it for me. Couldn't tell you how it was done, but I know that that's what it's supposed to be. There is a formula, and they teach you, but you understand it there better. Like that's the thing that I notice about, not to date any of us, but the old
Yes.
school is what they call it, right? Same with us. When I first was into Navy recruiting, like we didn't have computer. We had our leads got mailed to the office. We called them P cards. They were pink. You wrote on them, and they went into a desk drawer, and they went into a file folder, and you would just pull out the file for that day, and then you would just revolve them. You had to hand file everything. You had to go walk and find someone. There was no cell phone to text and talk to you. Like there was no instant communication. Like you had to go out and build that rapport. You know what I mean? Like you had to go talk to people. Like it couldn't wait for it to come to you. Today, I think you still have to talk to people. You still have to be really good at relating to people. That's never going to change. But I think how you connect with people today is much easier than it was
Never.
back then. Because back then, you probably would have been what, the third or fourth guy that knock on the door and be like, "Hey, I know you've lived here a while. Are you thinking about refinancing?" You know what I mean? Like I'm sure people went door to door back then. Like, what are you going to do? Like, there's no automated way. Hey, I saw this newspaper ad and giving you a call. Like, you remember that? Newspaper ads. That was like the way. Mhm.
Well, but it's funny that you say that. That's what we used to do. We used to go to courthouse. So Ohio, which is where I started, Ohio is a state of 88 counties, and all recording is done at the county seats. So we would go to the courthouses in the county seats, and we would buy lists of mortgages that people had. Like there was a company back in the day called the Associates. So I would go to Marysville County, Ohio, to the courthouse on a Monday. I would get a list printed up of all the people who had mortgages with the associates, and then we would literally use a book called the Haynes Crisscross, or the phone book, and look up. Because on a mortgage you've got the last name and the address, so you've got enough to look it up. We'd look it up on the phone book. We would then put the phone numbers on it, and we would literally old school call people up and say, "Hey, my name is Sam. I'm working with Mid American Financial Services. I've been helping a lot of former associates clients in your area save a lot of money on their mortgage. Would you be
Yeah.
interested?" At the end of the day, I gave them a question that they couldn't say no to. You're not interested? I almost loved the no more because it was
Yeah.
such an
Yeah.
easy segue.
I would
Oh,
love
you're
to
not
live in your house
interested?
because it
Well,
sounds
put
like
me
you have
on
a
your
ton of money
Christmas
and
list. I
a
mean,
lot to
that's
burn.
that's
So
the
I could
silliest
really
thing
use
I've
some.
ever heard.
And that's why I'm calling you today. I was actually looking to get on your list.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, and Matt, those are the kinds of things that we used to say, and there was a shock value to when you said it, and it was really effective because you're really talking to somebody. It's not some automated, So yeah, it was a different world. The rules for lending were very different. We had we learned. You look at people who are in at Mutual of Omaha, like Chris Layden has this same background. We knew why we made loans to people. It wasn't a computer. When we pulled credit, if I pulled somebody's credit back in 95 and 96, if you asked me a question, how's their credit? I wouldn't answer, oh, they've got a 692 middle, because our credit reports didn't necessarily have scores on them. I'd be like, well, he's got a mortgage, he's
It
been
was you
paying his
determining
agreed, he's got
almost
a
like, is
car.
the
So
credit good enough, right?
like you said, it was much more. It was fundamental. It was the fundamentals of credit reports. Before, it was right at the advent of when credit scoring started becoming everything. So you made a good point. We definitely did. we definitely we just learned the fundamentals, and the whole pitch. Yes, it was harder to get a hold of people, but the whole pitch was I would sit down with people in front, in their house at
Yep.
their table and
Sit
drink
at the
their
kitchen
water and
table
give
because
whatever
that's where
food, you
all the
take
family
whatever food was
decisions are
given to
made.
you. It was
Nobody
much
makes a
more old
decision on the
school,
couch. It's made at the kitchen table because that's where the family sits. That's where everybody
that's
converses
right.
about their day. Back then,
Right.
today, that's not as true. A lot of people just have a breakfast table, but back then,
That's
in
right.
those times, I miss those times sometimes, or actually all the time. Kitchen table.
I miss those times all the time, and I think that even today, everything that we do is just a dance around all of that. Meaning,
Mhm.
all we're doing today is hopefully making our appointments better qualified, and then obviously we're delivering the data and the
Yeah. Well, I
paperwork
think
to
that's
them
where
electronically. But
that's where some
it's
of,
still
of
around
us that
relating
work
to and
with you have
connecting
the
to
advantage,
people.
right? And because of who we want to talk to, right? We want to talk to veterans out there, people that have served just like I've served, just like a lot of the people on our team have served. We relate instantly. So the instant relation of, hey, I just am calling to see if I can help you out. You can immediately speak that person's language, right? You don't necessarily have to be in the same branch of service, but I can speak your language. I understand your dark, dry. You think it's hilarious sense of humor, and I think that's funny too because that's how we grew up, right? We're a different breed of people, and to understand where they're coming from is much different, And there's a ton of people out there that just they don't relate to it. They don't understand. Uh, Sometimes you got to let somebody talk and let them tell you everything that they think they know because military people know everything, right? You knew that, right? We know it all. There's nothing we don't know.
Of course,
Right.
of
But
course.
the beautiful
And
thing
if
about
you
military
by chance
guys
don't
is you
know
let
it,
them
somebody
finish,
you
right?
know
And you go,
does.
now that you're done being wrong, I'm glad the C lawyer gave you all the information you need to know. But let me tell you how it really works, right? Especially with what we do. You can use your VA loan more than once. There's no limit to it. It doesn't expire. Those simple things that we found that we fight with people the most, it's like, it's right there. Read it. And they're like, oh my God, I've been wrong like all these years. And it's just amazing to see it. But you just let them go. You're like, man, cool story, bro. You ready for the real one though? Let me tell you, and it makes it great. But I do also miss those other times where I had to, just like you, I mean, I came into Navy recruiting in 2001. We had to do the same thing. Go to a high school, set up a table, talk to young people that came to the table, fight against the fact that peer pressure is not going to let the kids that would really be good to join the military or really were thinking about it, they're not going to come talk to you because they don't want to be made fun of by their friends and they don't want to do all that stuff, but they would reach out to you later. Sitting in a living room with some parents and a kid and talking about just the opportunities that the Navy would have for them and allowing them to yell at you, right? Tell you that it's never going to work and tell you that my kid's never going to go, off to the war and they're not going to go. A couple I used to hear all the times, my kid's not going to kill babies. That was always a great one. My kid is not going to, go out there and be shot at all the time. And I was in the Navy, right? I'm thinking, one, we don't target babies. I don't know where you heard that. I mean, great. And two, if your kid's in the Navy, unless they want to be a SEAL, right? Or an EOD guy or these special warfare dudes, and there's a lot of people that want to do it. But if your kid wants to be in the regular Navy, they're pushing a button. And then this big thing launches and it goes like a couple thousand miles. And then everybody just watches CNN and goes, yep, hit it. We're good. On to the next one. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, we're in the Navy. It's called water, like not land. And so you would have to just get around that. And the worst people we ever talked to, and maybe, I don't know how true this would be in our profession now, helping someone whose kid, their parent was in the service, right? This is how it works. This is what you do. All the old timers, right? This is how it works. You're like, come on, man, it doesn't work that way. And it was harder to overcome an objection from a military member or veteran for their kids than it was for someone that just didn't know because they're willing to be open and listen. Everybody has their ideas and stories, and it was hard to overcome sometimes. But I miss the grind. Does that make sense? It's a different grind today. It's a different grind, you know? Yeah, than it is
Of course.
today. It was just a different grind. You had to actually hustle. You
Even
had to
in
get out
even
there. You
in
had to drive your
recruiting, it was a
car.
different
You
grind.
had to walk into businesses. I had to go walk all the way down the street and knock on your door because I, again, like you guys would buy the lists. If you took the ASVAB test in high school, we got the list. We had your, it has your address. It's public information. Yeah. Get out of
I
class.
I took mine. Oh yeah,
You know
I
how many
took mine,
times
and
we
I
heard
got
that?
all of the calls. I took mine to just get out of. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
yeah. And so we would call,
I
and then
scored really well on
we
that.
would
I
go to
was
the
getting
counselor at the
calls for the
school and
next
see if we could
year
talk to you. And then we would go, we
for
would even do
sure.
door knocking and stuff like that. But that's what made it fun. The challenge, it's a different challenge today. It's fun. I'm having a good time, but it is a different challenge. It's something that you have to just get used to.
But that's the question: is it really different, or do you just have to go about it differently? I think that this is, I think, the age
Hmm.
old question, Matt, is people try to say,
Sure.
"Oh, the business is so different." Well, no, it's really not. You just have to go about it differently. The business itself, it hasn't really, what are we still doing? Well, we're still helping folks, buy homes. And you ask a question, like I've been doing this now for 25, 26 years. Holy shit. 26 years. August 5th was 26 years. Um, August 1st, I think, was 26 years. You can't do anything that long.
Sure.
Certainly, I don't think I could if it wasn't rewarding. And when you talk about, is it still
Hmm.
rewarding? Yes, it's is it still a grind? For sure it can be, yeah. But when you can, it's trying to think of the best way to say this, is it's never
It's your job.
helping the folks that's easy to help.
Yep.
That's you know that's that's easy. That's strawberry shortcake. That's a
Yeah.
summer season strawberry shortcake. It's easy, it's nice, it's great. It's the folks that we really make a difference for, the folks that buy for the first time in their family. Everybody has that first person that's the first person to go to college, the first person to own a home, the folks that didn't think
Hmm.
that they could own, the folks that we needed to help coach. It's rewarding because if again, I don't know about you, but most of my memories, and this is from childhood in various countries, all revolve around the place where I lived. And there's a nobility to what we do because we provide people the place that they live in that's theirs. I mean, my childhood memories are all of this home or that home, or the things that happened while we lived here, or and I think it would be very hard for me to do anything for this long if there wasn't a nobility
No.
to what we do.
Probably a
Are we
good thing.
doctors? No. Are we lawyers? No, which is that's right. Um, uh, but what are we? Well, we're the people that help you make that place for kids
That's
like
true.
us to have those warm and fond and safe memories. Of where where when I go to my parents' house, which isn't that frequent, but I sleep better there because there's just, you revert back to that feeling of security and protection, and that's what a home is. And then I always tell this story. Um, I don't know that I ever really realized this until the last probably 20 years. I'm almost 50 now, so when I turned 30, when I was a kid growing up in Israel, around third and fourth and fifth grade, all the kids started moving. Not all, but a lot of the kids started moving. And why did they start moving? Because what had happened was their parents had probably bought a piece of land 10 years earlier. And over weekends and holidays and over time, they little by little built a home that was finally ready for them to move into 10 years later. And the one thing that I've always said, America's an unbelievable place. And there's millions of reasons for why it's an unbelievable place. But I think fundamentally speaking, the emphasis on and ease, relative ease of being able to put your family into a home compared to the rest of the world, there's nothing like it. You know, you look all over Western Europe, which is a very modern and institution laden. They don't do 30-year fixed mortgages. They certainly don't do them for much less than 20% down. And if they do, the terms are terrible. You have to take out life insurance policies. There is no country that I'm aware of in the whole world that makes and emphasizes, if you said to 100 people, top five, Richard Dawson, Family Feud, top five, things associated with the American dream, home is going to be one overwhelmingly. The white picket fence, all the visions of the American dream, and what we do is noble. We certainly help people achieve that, and what you guys do, and this has been my honor, and this is really in the last 5-6 years of my career, the whole this has been an opening of a new chapter for me. The VA loans, I
Oh
never
yeah,
did them a lot
yeah,
in my career for all of the reasons that we talk about in the class. We just didn't do them, and all the wrong reasons. And this last 5-6 years has really been a rebirth for me, and serving beside you guys, you and Sean and David and Matt and everybody. It's been humbling, and I think that a lot of that is because of the information that I didn't know for the first 20 years. I think a lot of it is how I grew up, where I grew up, always thinking that I was going to serve. It's really been humbling, and it's been awesome. And I look forward to finishing my career with the VA loan and
yeah.
serving veterans being a
Well,
big
we
part
appreciate all of the
of what I
support
do.
and the
So it's been
help, and
awesome. So I owe you
just the
guys
little
a debt of
things.
gratitude.
I will tell you, when you look at what you were just saying about living in America and having that home. I mean, what do we portray? If you're a real estate agent out there, they portray on a listing when you see an open house flyer, and we do a lot of them in that list report system, right? And a lot of times, even in that system, it's like, oh, are you ready to make memories in this house? This house is ready for you and your family to make memories for years to come. And everything is built off making the memory and giving you the sense of comfort, right? There's a sense of comfort and safety in a place that you can live, that you feel is safe, that you feel like when you drive up to that home, you can see your kids playing in the streets. You can see them with other kids in the neighborhood. You can see yourself, you know, making friendships and bonds with the neighbors that you have. And that's why I'm not going to say it's easy, but that's why it's very, very, well, familiar for us to work with who we work with. Because every time we would move and transfer in the
Fulfilling.
military, I never, ever moved to look at where I was going to live. When my wife and I would move and transfer and go to a new duty station, the number one priority, schools. Let's go look at the schools. Let's go meet the teachers. Let's go meet the principal. Let's go look up their ratings. Let's look up what they're doing. I'm talking elementary school, man. Like, we're not just talking high school and where you can feed. And so we would go look for the schools. And there's a correlation, right? The schools that we picked just happened to be in good neighborhoods. We paid higher taxes pretty much everywhere we lived. We just did. When you pay higher taxes, you get a better education system, and it's a choice. And that is one part of when you serve in the military. You just have the ability to do that. And that's what a lot of these guys are looking for. Um, the most fulfilling thing that I found recently that I just never really thought about as a military guy, helping the older generation of guys, like these Vietnam era guys and the guys a little bit after, that just don't understand and know that they can use their benefits still. They're living in an apartment. They've got to go up 3 flights of stairs to get to their place. Like, they're using a cane or a walker, because they're getting older. And now showing them that they can buy a small patio home or something like that, where now they can just get out of the car and walk in the door. The joy that comes in that, it's like, I don't, there's, that's payment, you know?
Yeah. And Matt, I can tell you, one of the best things about working with you guys is I know so much of what you're in for just because of experience, not because I'm smart, but I'm one of the other things that's exciting to me is watching you guys come into your own in a second phase of life. So that what you just expressed for that guy who served in Vietnam and didn't know that he could use and build equity and do so many things that are right for that person. I'm so excited to watch
22.
you guys develop. And you gave 20, you were
Yeah.
in what, 21, 22 years? Right. You're just starting again. And it's really awesome because I think you guys sort of contemplate how good this is going to be, but I love that you really have no idea yet because at the end of the day, you're going to get to do something that's certainly
Yeah.
lucrative, but you're going to do something lucrative that helps other people. And the whole focus of the team around doing the right thing always, it's good. I'm you and Byron and Sean and everybody, Michael. It's you do something for. Listen, you recruited. I'm sure towards the late part of your recruiting career, you were like, you needed to draw inspiration from other places so that you could go do what you needed to do. You guys are helping me more than you will ever know because you give me energy and strength and inspiration
Yeah.
to, you know, I'm on the back nine, right? And you're making it a lot easier to play that back nine. So I love it. I am having more fun with this part of my mortgage
No, I
career
appreciate
than
that. And
I
it's
ever would have
just,
imagined
I mean, I didn't
at this
realize,
phase. Really incredible.
I never
Thank
looked
you.
at it from that perspective, and to go back to what you said, like a lot of us that do the 20 years in the military, there's an age old adage, Sam. Man, I went 10. Might as well go 10 more, right? It's just 10 more years. And I kind of got there. I did get there. So in the Navy, you go from E1, and if you're just an enlisted sailor in the Navy, like the pinnacle of what you can do in the Navy is to become a chief petty officer. Like that is the goal, to wear anchors on your collar and be a chief. Like that is like no other, right? 7.5 years I made chief. Quick. Lived in Dallas. '08. Remember what happened in '08? I know you do because you've been doing this for a while. Yep. So right around that time, I was
I
coming up
lived
on,
through '08. Was
you
a little
know,
on the painful side, yes.
joined in '96. We're in '08, right at 12 years in the Navy. On the tail end, I had made chief a couple years before, and my wife and I contemplated getting out of the Navy because I was like, oh, I could just get a job. Like we can be here. We don't have to move. And boom, '08 hits. We're like, re-enlistment, right? Because we just didn't know what was going to happen, right? We could just keep
Good
renting,
move staying
not worried
in.
about buying, right?
Good
Because we're going to go
move.
every 3 years. But it was just it was a crazy time, so I decided to stay in. But what I'm grateful for is just all of the experience. Like I went from being an equipment operator, so I did construction in the Navy when I first joined, digging ditches, running equipment, pouring concrete. Like I remodeled a house that I first bought when my wife and I were very young, our first home purchase ever. I remodeled the whole thing except for the plumbing for the bathtubs. I did everything in that house. I learned how to do it in the Navy. The Navy taught me how to do that. I learned how to do construction work for free. Well, they paid me. And then as I went into recruiting duty, I switched to that. One, because I was getting married and I already had a daughter. My daughter was already in the world, and I didn't want to have to leave. Right, it's right after I went to recruiting duty in 9/11. I almost didn't make it because I was in the Bahamas when 9/11 happened. Like we're in a small island in the Bahamas, patrolling a Bahamian island in a truck with shotguns because you don't know who's coming. I was like, we're in the like they're not coming to the Bahamas. This place is nice. Nobody's gonna come here. But you had to protect it. But then what I did, we were direct. CBs are direct support for the Marine Corps. We build all the tent camps. We help in their convoy security. We're driving the Humvees with the 50 caliber machine guns on them. We're like getting them to the safety points, right? We're helping move them through. Marines are really great at fighting. We need to help support that. So I was like, we're on the bus. The only thing that saved me is I was going to recruiting duty. Obviously, now we need people to recruit more than ever, right? So I was able to go do that. And I was in recruiting for a few years.
Right.
December the 10th, 1996 is when I went to boot camp, but I joined the delayed
When
entry
did you
program
enlist, man?
June the 27th of 1996. It's weird that you know those days, but my wife's birthday is the day that I joined and the day that I retired.
Okay.
It's crazy. It's pretty cool. Um, but you know, when you go in and we get there, I was doing recruiting for a few years, and I looked back, and not that I would not have deployed anymore or done anything. What moved me the most is that I had letters coming from kids that joined the Navy out of New Orleans, Louisiana. They're coming from the projects and coming from all these different places. I'm sure being familiar living in Chicago, like there's a lot of areas that kids in general, they just don't have a fair shake, man. Right? They're not going to get that opportunity, but there's a ton of smart kids out there. I would get letters all the time. Like I'd be dead if it wasn't for you. You got me out of this crazy place. I have a future. Like reading those things, I was like, there's no way I'm going back to like deploying and going. Like I have the ability to change like lives. So I switched over to being a career recruiter. At first, I didn't think I was ever going to have to move, but that was part of that. If you don't ask the right questions, you're not going to find the right answers. Uh, for sure. And so I went to recruiting and stayed. And so I
I mean,
did that
that's
for
as
a long
true a
time.
lesson as you'll
The,
have in anything.
to your point just now, this is the long go around to get there. Towards the end of my career, you got to find something, right? I just got presented with the opportunity the last 7 years I was in the Navy to be a trainer. So I was really good at what I did in recruiting duty. So my CO at the time, who's now a captain, who was like, I served with this guy 3 times in recruiting duty. Like he was a lieutenant in '03, I was in E5, and now he retired as a '06. I retired as like we went through the ladder together. Um, he came up to me and he was like, "Hey, you're not doing that job no more. Tomorrow you need to be up here. You're going to be the trainer." And I was like, "What?" So now I had to go all over the recruiting district in New Orleans. It was from New Orleans, Louisiana, down to Fort Walton Beach, Florida, all the way up to Greenville, Mississippi. Right? Recruiters were sucking at their job. It's your job to go fix them. You got to go in. You got to teach them. You got to train them. You got to listen to them. You got to make sure that they can be productive. That was the game changer because to the same sense, everybody does things differently. Just being able to go in and I, it's really funny to see two sides of a coin because when the trainer would come to my office when I was in their positions, I saw it like happen. You know, it's that flip. The trainer would come tell somebody, this is how you need to do this job. Like, look at it this way, look at it that way. If you're planning, do it like this. And the sailors would be like, that's the greatest thing I've ever heard in my life. And I'm in the background. What do you think I'm saying? No, I'm like, I've told you that 100 times. And then
No.
one trainer that I worked with was like, listen, man, it's not that they're not listening to you, but they have to live with you, which means you're the only person in their ass every day. You're the only person asking them if they're productive every day. You are training them, but you're like their dad. Nothing your dad ever tells you is the right thing. But if you hear your friend's dad say it, you're like, oh, Jimmy's dad said that we should do that. He's like, you just got to learn to go, okay, that is a great idea. We should do it. He goes, and what's the difference, right? What's the difference? Are they still going to do what you want them to do? I was like, well, yeah, but they're not
Hmm.
listening to me, right? He's like, you got to get
Yes.
that ego out of the way, my man. Right. Like they're still going to do it. And he goes, they're not,
Who
and I'm not always
cares?
going to get through to them. But that one interaction, I was like, man, he's right. Like, who cares? And I saw it full circle. Like I would go in to be a trainer at the end of my career and I'd walk in the door and I still like played to the fundamentals of everything. We used to have to write down planners. Like towards the end of my career, we started wanting to do the planner on the computer. which I'm not a super fan of because I believe that the computer gets lost because it's so easy and available, you just forget to do it, right? But if that planner is sitting on your desk, you're going to write on it, right? Like it's just for me it's just one of those things that of the days of old, right? Buying that county list to be able to do it. I'm sure if you could still do that today, you would, right? Like it's just a deal of I think that works well and it helps me to relate, you know? So I would teach them just how to do a planner on paper, then they would become productive. And I don't know how many times their bosses would call me. I don't know what you said to those guys, but they're killing it. I said, all I did is show them how to write down what they're doing on a piece of paper and understand what they're trying to accomplish. That's all I did. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
What gets measured gets done, and that fundamentally counts in NASA, in the military, in mortgages, in school. I'm sure that your best teachers, if you were to look at the top performers in any field, by the way, we were talking about baseball earlier. Albert Bell, controversial, one of my favorite players of all time, he had a note card of every at bat that he ever took. And he knew what pitches were thrown to him and tendencies. And I think that if you study and look at folks who are good at stuff, they didn't
Yeah,
just
he
fall out
practiced every
of,
day.
Michael Jordan was a phenomenal athlete. That guy would outwork anybody. So that's right. So you're 100% right in that those skills. And, again, I relate it back to Israel where everybody served. And Israel's got a fairly high proclivity for uh, public companies, publicly listed companies. Um, and I think that it's because the whole country is used to top down military style management and daily repetition and practice and discipline. And I would, so, and I've had long, and I've had discussions about this with some subject matter experts. I think compulsory service here would
Oh man,
be unbelievable
I love
because
those guys.
people will talk about the greatest generation, the
Yeah.
World War II, and I'm with you. And do you think that it's a surprise that that was the perceived glory heyday of the United States and all the institutions that came from those years and I don't think it's a surprise, and I think that what you're doing is you're giving of yourself to others. I mean,
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
baseball players back then have a 2-year gap because they went and served. Everybody served. It wasn't, you had said something that was
Sure.
very telling. And dude, I got a call in 2 minutes. I apologize, and I'm happy to resume this with you anytime. It was so you said something about the kids
Yep.
that you were reaching out to. They didn't want to be made fun of by their friends. I
Oh,
bet
it's going to be
you,
a funny story
and
for you,
well,
real
I don't
quick. I know
need
you
to
got a
bet
minute.
you. I mean, didn't
My
Clark
buddy
Gable
Jerry
serve? I
Alchin,
know Clark
he's a
Gable
Master Chief in
served.
the Navy right now. He has a autographed, stamped Bob Feller card. United States Navy Chief Petty Officer. Right, his rack at the USS
Cleveland
Alabama
Indian.
is right next to the magazine where they shot the
Yeah.
the uh, the
And,
the 5-inch guns on the USS Alabama during World War II. You can still go see it. His wife still goes there. What's funny is that guy went to a signing. Bob Feller was there, and they're like, "Oh, you got to buy a pack of baseball cards to get an autograph from Bob Feller." So he has a Bob Feller card. This lucky guy buys a pack of cards, stamped autographed Bob Feller card in it. It's like, you're the luckiest dude ever, man.
it's a whole Matt, it's a whole generation of so I know that the reasons that you can't have a standing army of 22 million people, it's too expensive, blah blah blah. I get that, but I do think there should be a concept. Not to mention, if I'd have gone in the military, I wouldn't have been 5 years at Ohio State because a kid who goes to
They have
college
direction.
after serving in the military, they're
Yeah.
just not that. I was a moron. I was a moron. I was a full on brain dead idiot. And if I would have gone places, seen things, physically given of myself,
Sure.
I promise you things
Absolutely.
would have been different. And I am happy to pick this up with you next week whenever you want, whatever you want. The call was at 10 and I pushed them
Oh,
back
no, we're good,
15. I
man. This is
apologize,
great.
and
I really
I'm
appreciate
fully
it.
aware that I
There's
wouldn't
gonna
be
be
late if
tons
I
more, I
hadn't been
promise you.
late.
Like, we'll
So,
do it again. It doesn't
um,
have to be a pickup. It can be another one. Thank you.
I anytime, Matt, anytime. I'm so proud of you guys, and I am so humbled and happy. It's a it. I know people say this, and I hope it's coming through. It's such an honor for me to do this. Like